This is the France 24 debate. We're looking at how North Korea's new leader, Kim Jong-un, is keeping the world guessing as they ratchet up the rhetoric. With us to talk about it, Antoine Bondaz, visiting fellow at the IRII Center of Korea University. Welcome back as well to blogger and political scientist Alexandre Valle. Joining us from the south of France, retired General Vincent Brisset of the French international policy think tank IRII, and in Washington, D.C., GU of the Republican-leaning lobbying group DCI. G, you were telling us before the break how you visited North Korea in 2004. We know that the country has changed quite a bit since, but it's kind of impressive for us here. We're not even exactly sure of the leader's age.
Yes, this is a very mysterious regime, and even its own people do not see their leader in person very often. I was there during the last leader's 40th anniversary of becoming a member of the Communist Workers' Party, and they threw a big party for him, and he didn't even show up. There's very little that we know about this new leader.
And did it seem like a place out of time?
Yes, it's definitely a very surreal experience for me as somebody who grew up in China and traveled to Europe and U.S. and go back to North Korea and see how the place just looked like China only 20 years before. And you see just across the border, you have all this economic development on the Chinese side, where Korea just seemed to stood in time and refused to move forward. It's definitely a very surreal experience. But I think fundamentally there are two questions we need to ask when it comes to the Korean government and the Korean leader. One is, what does North Korea want? What's the concern of the government? Why are they behaving this way? I think their top concern is to preserve their own regime, and I think that's the reason why a lot of analysts arrive at the conclusion that they're not really going to launch a military attack on Japan or South Korea, because the lifeline of any communist regime is stability. They don't want to introduce any wild card into their domestic environment, and also they know militarily they just stand very little chance in winning a war. However, I think if we do ask China to cut off all ties with North Korea and force North Korea into a situation where they cannot sustain the livelihood of their own population, I think that the stability of that regime is being threatened. So if that happens, I think the likelihood of a military conflict initiated by North Korea will be actually greater. So, just to go back to what we were talking before the break, I don't think forcing China to adopt a more drastic measure to North Korea is in a lot of people's benefit. And the second question we need to ask is simply, do you see Kim Jong-un as a rational actor? If he is rational, then, a lot of options are on the table. Maybe this is another saber rattling to get more aid to the country. Then, maybe it's in everybody's interest to temporarily at least buy him off. Or if you think, we need to stop him to change his behavior.
Let's pick up on that point.
Yes.
For many say that we tend to underestimate here a regime that's managed since the end of the Korean War in 1953 to roll with the punches, and that he is indeed rational, to pick up on what GU was saying. And again, as we were saying at the top, the founder of North Korea, nearly 2 decades after his death, still holds the title of Eternal Chairman of the Republic. Oliver Farry reports on how the grandson is handling this legacy and the limelight.
Kim Jong-un's first public appearance alongside his father in October 2010 took the world by surprise. Though resembling Kim Jong-il and his father Kim Il-sung, many outside North Korea wondered if the younger Kim might be a potential modernising influence. Educated in Switzerland and seemingly more interested in sport than in politics, Kim Jong-un was very much au fait with Western ways. Fast-tracked to a general's post in North Korea's military, he began preparing for a future position as head of state and army chief of staff, often seen in the company of generals, unsurprisingly given the important role of North Korea's army, believed to be the world's fourth largest. Kim Jong-il could always count on the loyalty of his generals, but he met his end in December 2011, leaving the young Jong-un alone at the helm. The period of mourning over, he reappeared with a young wife. And there were further suggestions of a thaw in the regime when he attended a concert in Beijing, fronted by none other than Mickey Mouse. And on New Year's Day this year, he struck a conciliatory tone in an address to the Communist Party.
An important issue in putting an end to the division of the country is to remove confrontation between the North and South.
But if some harboured hopes of a Pyongyang spring, they were very much premature.
Outside North Korea. And his foreign language is very excellent in German or Italian or French, whatever. But the problem is that he is the prince of the royal family of the dictatorial system.
On the 12th of February, the North Korean regime announced a nuclear test scheduled for the following day. After condemnation at the UN, North Korea hardened its tone. Kim became more and more present on television, observing military manoeuvres. He was pictured playing with small arms and promised nuclear war with the United States. The new leader has suddenly become intemperate, but are there any counterweights within the shadowy North Korean regime?
I think Kim Jong-un would take the driving seat, and there's absolutely no one at this time to oppose to what Kim Jong-un decides.
The 30-year-old leader himself faces a tricky task over how he can later back down from his bellicose rhetoric.
Antoine Bondaz, do you agree with that he is the man in charge?
Yeah, actually the system, the political system in North Korea is characterized by what we call Suryong. It means that one man controls the party, the army and the state. From December 2011 to April 2012, he concentrated all the power. He became supreme leader, supreme commander, first secretary, first chairman, and even in July, he became marshal of the army. So yes, he has all the power. He has some people around him trying to influence him with also some powers, like, for example, his aunt, Kim Kyung-hae, his uncle-in-law, Jong Song-taek.
I was going to say, last week there was a column in the Sunday Telegraph which pointed to the influence of the aunt and uncle, saying, the article went so far as to claim that they were the ones pulling the strings. But do you agree with that?
I don't agree, and I think that no North Korean specialists, mostly in South Korea, could agree with that. Jong Song-taek is often presented as a reformist on the economic aspects. But in North Korea, nobody wants to reform the regime, because if they reform the regime will collapse. And all the elite of the country will lose everything. So it's in nobody's interest to reform drastically the regime.
Nobody's interest to reform the regime. General Brisset, does that mean that we're stuck in this sort of, I guess, I don't know how to describe it, but we're stuck in 1953 forever when it comes to relations between the South and the North?
For the time being, I'm afraid so, yes, because if nothing changes at the head of North Korea, there is no reason for reunification. And the longer the separation lasts, the less hope for reunification. Since young people in South Korea, they have not known people in the North. They don't feel separated from a family or something like that. So they don't want to exchange the today's comfort against reunification, which for them means less comfort and giving what they have for reunification.
Let's speak about comfort. I know it's a relative term when it comes to North Korea, but we see that over the past decade, trade has doubled between the South and the North. And so many are wondering about this recall of 53,000 North Korean workers from the Kaesong industrial complex. They say it's far more significant than any of the previous other threats. Why is the North cutting itself off from the outside world, General?
I think what's important for Kim Jong-un now is to show to his people that he's a strong man. Whatever happens with the US, with South Korea or Japan, he's showing to his country that he's taking military action or showing military strengths. And he hopes, I think it was the trick since the very beginning, he hopes that the US will come to the negotiation table, will ask to come to the negotiation table. And he can tell his people, we have won the war, we have won, and they've been afraid of us, so they go on to the negotiation table. He can deliver that speech if the country remains locked. If the country gets an opening to the outside, and Kaesong is some of an opening to the outside, it could lose this way of doing with its people.
Alexandre Delval, which brings us to the issue of the United States,
yes.
Which, on the one hand, deployed stealth bombers, deployed anti-missile systems to the island of Guam, has for a while, when the rhetoric started to rise a couple of weeks ago, seemed to be flexing its muscle too, and then we got the word at the end of last week that Washington was backing off a scheduled military maneuvers with the South. Should the U.S. be flexing its muscle, or should it be easing off to give North Korea a way out?
The aim of the regime, of course, is what it has been doing for many, many years. It's the same strategy. Nothing is new.
So how should Washington handle it?
Making threat in order to get money. This regime is completely collapsing if it doesn't get money from the South. Sometimes when he says that we can deal with the South, it's in order to get money. When he threatens the West, it's in order to get money, and helps. You know that even the civil nuclear industry was partially helped by the West, by United States.
Was Washington
in
right?
Change of abandoning military?
Was Washington right
nuclear.
to cancel those military maneuvers?
No, it's not possible to cancel, but this regime is obliged to play this game in order to try to avoid sanctions in order to get money and help from the West. But I wanted to add just something. Reunification, only China has a really interest in reunification now, because for the South it would cost it would cost something like $30 trillion minimum. For Japan, it will be also something quite dangerous, because it's already the main competitor of Japan, the South. Imagine a reunification under South rules. Then for the moment, the one who in the region who has interest for a reunification is more China rather than South Korea and Japan.
Okay. Antoine Bondaz, was Washington right to cancel those military exercises?
I think they were right, and they need to act on both things. They should stay like deterrent force. They should like warm the alliance with South Korea and Japan, but in the same time they should be like open to dialogue. And I think it's a good thing that John Kerry just said, like, we are still open to dialogue. But there is something else I wanted to say, that North Korea is not only looking for money. North Korea is also looking for recognition, international recognition. And what North Korea wants is to have normal relations with the United States. It means like to establish formal diplomatic relations with Washington, with Tokyo.
And
it has been a request.
And this is their way of saying we want normal relations?
It has been a way of saying it. Because
do you see that this way, that this is their way of saying we want normal relations?
I wouldn't say they want normal relations with the U.S., because that would be really difficult to justify to their own people, since they have spread hatred about the U.S. for so many years. But I think they definitely want international recognition, especially personally to the new leader, Kim Jong-un. He's a new guy. He has a lot of things to prove domestically. He definitely want to let people see that he can do equally good as his father did, or he can probably even outdo his father. That's why he's looking for so many innovative ways to agitate the West.
Right.
But if I could answer the question on whether Washington was right in canceling the maneuver, I think there were two reasons behind the cancellation. One is like what we have said, we don't know much about the new regime, so it's a kind of a delay tactic. We just want to see where things go. And second, I think it's to send a signal to North Korea that we're down with playing the saber rattling game. You can do as much this as you want, but we're not going to play along.
We're not going to play that game. There's one quarter we really haven't heard from yet, and that's South Korea. The new president, Park Geun-hye, came into office promising what she called trust politique with the North, but the daughter of former South Korean dictator Park Chung-hee now striking a different tone.
Investment is all about being able to anticipate results and trust. And when you have the North breaking international regulations and promises like this and suspending Kaesong while the world is watching, no country in the world will invest in the North.
Antoine, Bondaz, how's she doing so far?
Actually, she arrived like only a few weeks ago because she became real president the 25th, if I remember well, of February. She's doing good. I think it's very, very difficult for her. She was not like expecting such a big crisis in the first weeks of her.
Her predecessor accused of being too soft on North Korea.
She's from the same party, Saenuri. She's from the same party as Im Young-bak. She changed completely the team, of course, but she's a conservative. She's still hard on North Korea, and she's completely different from the liberals. Is she not hard enough? I don't know, and it's very hard to say. At least she's firm with North Korea.
And you think this is the right tone you should have?
Once again, you need both. You need to deter North Korea from provoking you, and then you need to be open to dialogue.
All right, so a two-speed approach, if you will. Antoine Bondaz, I want to thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate. I also want to thank Alexandre del Valle, General Jean-Vincent Brisset for joining us from near Montpellier in the south of France, and in Washington, D.C., GU. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.